So what we're going to do now is we're going to put the distributor drive into the back of the gear on the end of the camshaft. And to do this, we need to put it in the right position for the firing order of the distributor cap. So what we do is we look at the camshaft. The easiest way is to look at the camshaft, and you can see that this camshaft is beginning to open the inlet valve on the number 1 cylinder. And it's also showing going away from the exhaust closing. So this number 1 cylinder is what we call on the rock. Inlet about to open, exhaust closed. So we come back to the back. Here we've got the gear. So what we know is that A1 is when the rotor is pointing almost straight ahead. But we know that A1 isn't firing because it's on the rock. So we need the distributor drive to be, or the rotor and the distributor drive pointing to the rear. But because it's ambidextrous, it doesn't matter. What does matter is that the slot in this gear is exactly at right angles or in line with the camshaft. So that being said, we're going to put the thrust washer on that point there. We're going to take the drive, and we're going to feed it in to the gear at the right point to give us a straight ahead drive. Well, we're 1 tooth out at that point, so we'll go 1 more. And I'll get my camera chap here to go down that hole, and you can see that that distributor drive is at the right point.
I guess I'm your camera chap.
You're my camera chap. So now we've got that done, we keep the keeper, or the point that keeps that from riding up, is this here. We're going to put, we've got some an O-ring here, a new one, so need a little bit of... So now we've got the slot straight ahead, we need to put the distributor drive into our slot. So we're going to go down, give that a bit of a wiggle.
And that'll go either way, right?
Yeah, that'll go either way. And we're going to put this on, which is the bush that keeps it in. We've got a gasket, and then our housing. So we're going to put some gasket glue on there, and we're going to drop this in, and we'll take it up from... So we're going to wet this gasket. The gasket dries out, shrinks up, and then you're going to break it if you put it on. But if you take a little bit of warm water, let the water run onto the gasket for a bit, it'll expand and become pliable. So we've got the distributor drive there. I put a bit of gasket glue on the gasket. We showed you how to wet that, and this is a nice fit there, nice machine fit. We just wind this in. We're going to put the crankshaft seal in. It's got the thread, which as the crankshaft turns inside, it's supposed to wind the oil back into the engine. The only problem with this kind of a seal is that if the car is parked on a steep hill, like on a driveway or something, the oil can creep by, which tends to be one of the reasons that they call, you know, they leak. So that's the only downfall. Of course, in later models, they went to a real seal to overcome those kinds of problems, but just early technology. So we put some gasket maker on the surface, and young Steve has wet this gasket, as we explained earlier, being paper. So now we've got a good fit. So we've got 2 dowels, one there and one there. Generally they're in the cover, but it's not a big deal. It's not going to make any difference. The dowel is to keep it central so it doesn't get close to the crankshaft. See that's there, and you can see the very, very tight arrangement so that it can act as the seal. The bolts in this seal there, and then we're going to go on and put the cover on the back of the camshaft.
This is what we call a little tightening.
Now we're going to do a little tightening here. I can't mention it enough. These are lots and lots of quarter screws, and you can stretch these screws. As I said previously, you need to be aware that you don't need to make the screws twice as long as they were when they were manufactured by stretching them. So you get the feel for them, put them in, they'll stay in. I like to do a bit of a crisscross just because. Okay. We put the gasket on this cover, the camshaft back cover, and we're just going to put this on, and this is going to close up. Oh, I made a bit of a mess there, a bit of a mucky pup. Yeah, I'll have to do some wiping up. Keep the good look up. We're just going to add the screws, and then I'll do another tighten, and that closes it off. After that, we're going to lift the engine up on its back, and we're going to put the pan on, so you can look forward to that. So last but not least, we're going to put the closing plate on. This is a Cloud 3 engine. On the Cloud 2s, they used to have one of those road draft breathers, and as we all know, they were the worst polluters there were. So by 1963, they had abandoned that system and gone to the breather in the oil filler, and that's why you've got that extra pipe in the oil filler on a Cloud 3 that you don't have on a Cloud 2. So must be time to wash my hands, the muckiness of the gasket maker. Yeah, let's have a clean up here. So we'll just tighten these two up and we'll be good. One. We're going to put together the oil pickup, which sits in the bottom of the pan, obviously, and it's made up of a number of pieces, but there's the screen and the gasket and the pedestal. So the gasket goes on there, it sits onto the pedestal, and then it's held on with a hex bolt with a hole for a split pin, a washer on. So, yeah. Always elusive, there it is, right there. Okay. Now we're going to put that through, like so. Bend our split pin back. And we're going to cut the tails off, and we'll place the O-ring into this hole here, which is pretty straightforward. You always want to change these O-rings on an engine rebuild because they get extremely hard over the period, and you'll have to try and start the O-ring in the groove so that you can begin the challenge of making the rest of it follow into the groove, if you know.
So there you go, it's started now. Goes in all the way around. Make sure that it's there. And then we got to put this in. So we're going to put a
Grease on there?
a little bit of grease on there, yeah.
Or lube.
Lube, whatever, yeah.
Engine lube.
You see, and that's gone in there nicely. So we're going to then take the other housing. This housing joins to the block just by the pump. So again, we're going to need to put an O-ring in, and again, have to get the O-ring to start. Oops. So we're going to put the O-ring in there. Can look in there and see how far in we are, and you won't be able to see it on camera, but we're not on there yet. So I think what I might do to make my life a bit easier is take that off there and then push down, because it takes quite a bit of effort. There, I felt it go in. I actually can see it. I don't suppose you can see it on the camera. And then we're going to put this in here. And that's ready to mount to the crankcase. We've got the pickup arrangement. We actually ended up putting a washer under this head of the bolt and there to get the bolt and the split pin to be in the right position, the split pin hole to be in the right position. So there's a washer there and a washer there. I'm not sure that that's going to be on every engine, but anyway, that's what we needed to do. So I'm going to cut this cotter pin, split pin, whatever you want to call it, bend that over, and this is ready to go on to the engine. This sits like so. Got the mounting point there, and then the pickup point there. We're going to need a gasket on there, but because it's an internal gasket, we're not going to bother with putting goop on there. I'm sure it's going to seal enough to pick oil up, and once the oil's picked up, we've got no worries. So we're going to put our bolts in.
Get lock pins on those.
And there's lock tabs on there. You can see by the holes that we're going to have lock tabs on there. So we'll get that on, and then we'll show you that part of it.
Go.
So here we go. We've got our bolts in there. We've got our lock tabs and our gasket. I'm going to put that in there. That just started. This position. Now we've got our lock tabs on this bolt. Make sure they go in the hole, the lock tabs that is. So I'm going to wind those in.
Well, all these young guys watching are going to want one of those speed wrenches.
That's right. That's right. Because this is the secret weapon of the old folk. The lock tab's been a little difficult to say the least here on this one.
Let's start over again. Go.
So we're going to tighten the bolts up that hold the oil pickup. Got 4. And then I'm just going to lock tab them. And that's that. So now we've got the oil pickup, we can put the oil pan on, and we're a little further on with the project. So an important note here, the way that we got this strainer in is incorrect. The bolt being this far down stops the pan from going on. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to turn this bolt around so the head of the bolt is on the strainer. So that's a good thing to watch for.
Even us experts have trouble every once in a while.
Yeah. It's old age and no memory, but generally speaking, when we were doing these on an ongoing basis, we didn't used to take these apart. We threw the whole thing in the cleaner, but these guys that take them apart want them down. So we're going to have the head of the bolt down, and then we'll split pin the thing. So that'll give us the 1/4 of an inch that the pan wouldn't go up against the block. So anyway.
And Royce going ahead and putting that pin in there.
Okay. So when I cut these now, obviously I'm going to hang on to the end so they don't end up in the engine. Throw that away. Throw that. And that should allow us to get the pan on properly now. Yep. So we're putting the ultra what's-it on the gasket here. Larry DeRocha was the guy that started me on this. I didn't like this stuff at one point, but as he said, and quite rightly too, that these engines always leak, so you've got to do something to try and stop them. And he kind of put me onto this. I don't have a clue what he's using now for his other projects, but I think it's the right thing to do. You want to keep the oil in it. You don't need it on the garage floor or that. So hopefully it will do the job.
Yeah, I get my 3 drips out the back end every once in a while, no matter what I do.
Yeah, well, that's probably that seal.
Well, and I use the modern, synthetic oils too, which come out easier.
Well, yeah, so we do what we can. And
Go.
okay, so I'm going to make sure that the strainer goes into the pan. I'm going to start a couple of bolts here. Everything's straight. I don't know if the gasket's messing me up a bit or not. Try another hole. Always try another hole.
Yeah, you're off the gasket.
I'm off.
There you go.
Sure it's in. Sure it's in. Good. What I'm doing is I'm starting in the middle on my final tightening, and I'm crisscrossing across on the same principle as allowing the pan to go in. Probably doesn't make a blind bit of difference, but that's the thought I'm using. So.
And we're going to go ahead and do the rest of those, but we're not going to put you through the whole screwing proposition.
So we're putting a bit of the ultra black on there so we don't have a leak, hopefully. We don't have a leak. And then we're going to put the filter housing on. We're not going to put the filter on because it's probably better to leave it off till we've finished our rotating and the like. Gives us a better chance. So we'll put the gasket on there. My fingers. on. It's much easier doing it here than trying to do it from underneath, because the bolts are so much easier to see and do. We're finishing off putting this filter housing in. It's a bit of a fiddle, and that's one of the reasons that we put it on now, because it is a difficult thing to start, and nothing really fits very well, but let's just finish up here. And then we're going to put on the mounts, the front mount brackets, so that we can move the engine yet again and put it down on the pan so that we can put the flywheel on. So that's that.
Okay,
So we're putting on the front engine mount brackets. Figured we'd do this and it give us a better point of contact for the lifting device. So, because we're going to, as I said earlier, we're going to rotate this engine so we can get the flywheel on and keep moving forwards. Putting some nuts on there. You take note of how the brackets go on the block, because they will fit the other way. So we're going to put the flywheel on. This is, the holes are drilled offset, just like the camshaft at the other end. And I've determined that the position, I've got a dot here, and this position is at 5 o'clock. So what I'm going to do is, keeping this one there, I'm going to put that, I think I've moved.
There is a gasket on there, right, Ron?
Right, I put a gasket on there.
And we put gasket sealer.
Yeah. Got that there. And as I said, this is our 5 o'clock position. Be doing another take on this, I think. Because I'm not getting these ones in here. So with a little bit of finagling and moving about, I had to move the flywheel a little bit, just there. And so I had a dot there. I took the centerpiece and I went all the way round without the gasket or anything on, and I aligned this. And then laying it on the bench, I then aligned the flywheel to this and kept it all in the right position to go on. It's a real finagly thing, and you need to know where it's going on because you don't want to spoil the gasket. Anyway, I'm going to tighten those up and we'll show you the next step. I'm going to torque these 3/8 bolts to 45 pounds just because it gives me peace of mind. So I'm going to need somebody. I'm going to crisscross a bit first. There's one already. There's two. I was going to say, I thought I needed somebody to hold it, but being so close to the centre of the crankshaft, I guess you don't get a lot of pull, so it's worth doing. It just makes you feel that it's on evenly. We're going to fit the tappet cover. What we're using is the rubber gasket. They offer cork, but they've been rubber all their lives, ever since they've been making the car, so we're going to go with the rubber. I'm going to try and put it on here without losing it out of the groove, like so. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take a page out of the shadow book, and we're going to use what these had originally was a flat washer, but we're going to put an aluminum washer underneath to make sure that we don't have any leakage. So what I'm going to do is take the aluminum washers, put those on under the regular washers. So take a washer and an aluminum washer, and that's to give us that extra bit of seal right there. Start in the middle. Them down again from the center and just work our way out. So. There we have the tappet cover on. So we'll move on to the inlet manifold and the closing pieces and the rockers.